hottest sub 60-year-old on the planet. But she didn't want to meet you, Chris. I don't know why.
True story. No, really. I wish that was the case. My life would be a hell of a lot easier.
Dude, speaking of getting fit, I was noticing, if you guys saw a weird look on my arm, when you first start working out, it's weird the way your body changes in a really good way. But like, I'm noticing things changing that I didn't think could notice at my age. I'm psyched. But that said, it's getting harder and harder to stay consistent.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. Yeah, you got
off. I have a gym in my basement, and I hardly make it down there. I have a full on gym with like tons of equipment, and I just never make it.
I mean, I go 6 days a week, so
that's awesome.
I only made it 3 days this week. Hey, Cindy joined us, our first studio audience resident. How are you, Cindy? Hope things are good wherever you are.
It's always good.
More people to pop in. There's John. Good evening.
It's always good, John, when you're working out and looking at your body changing, because all the changes now is you just get hair in awkward places.
No comment. I'm a Greek. I've always had hair in awkward places. It's kind of gone the other way at this age. Hey, Kristen, how are you? Good to see you.
Your hair migrates from up here down to your ears, through your nose.
The ear thing is real.
Yeah,
it's annoying. It's annoying. It's annoying. You have to keep up with it.
Then you'll forget for a week or two, and all of a sudden you'll realize you went somewhere or did something or were near people, and you happen to look over and you realize it's like this long, and you're like, oh, for the love of God, do you think anybody saw that?
Yeah. Now imagine being out on a date and realizing that you didn't use your ear hair clippers before you went out.
Oh, God.
We're at that age now. I can't just like.
I see Michael, Kristen, as I said, hello. It looks like we're filling up.
You could probably guess that in my closet I'm constantly.
So I got an email after our last show, and somebody commented that they didn't know if I was being sarcastic when I referred to them specifically as our fourth host. And they're actually like, were you making fun of me? And if you were, that's okay. I know we're Gen X. But if I was talking too much in the audience and you called me your host making fun of it, I'm sorry. I'll try not to talk so much next time. And I said, no, the point of our show is that there are literally 4 hosts every week, 3 on camera, and you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So we will do what we can to show comments on stream so that people watching after the fact will see your comments as well. And sometimes we'll be able to keep up, and sometimes we won't, and sometimes you'll feel slighted, and other times you won't. Ace says they need a nose hair trimmer. That's going on stream.
Yeah. I love Colonel Mustard in the library with the rope personally.
Colonel Mustard. But I will tell you the nose hair, the unexpected thing is I expected the old man nose hair to come out of the nostrils. I didn't expect the nose hair coming out the tip of my nose. That one, I got to admit, I did not see coming.
Yeah.
And it's like a garden. They grow in little patches.
Oh, wow. That must be a Greek thing.
It must be, but I keep up with it.
It must be. I can proudly say at this moment a sentence I don't think I've ever dreamed of. I have no hairs growing out of my nose on top. Yeah.
Chin?
Oh, yeah. There's always like that one stray down here that like you haven't done it for a week and it's curling around and it's like, long.
Hey, Michelle. Hey, Life. Well, Jan, how are you? These are not the topics that we came here to discuss. Let's get into it. This is the Three View Mirror, a show where every week the three of us and then anyone brave enough to join us in the live studio audience is all about the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, growing up in Gen X era culture, pop culture specifically. And the cool thing about this show is that we don't just randomly talk about random topics. Every week, one of the three of us takes charge and comes up with 3 topics, and we have a hidden agenda. There's something in those 3 topics that connects from one to the other. And so at the end, we're all sitting there trying to figure out how to connect the 3 topics. And this week, there is none other than Chris Clues coming at us with this week's topic. So without any further ado, I'll let us introduce ourselves. My name is John Katrides. I'm better known as Gen X Jono across media platforms, and I'm joined by 2 friends. We'll start, as always, with Rochelle.
I am Rochelle O'Black, and I'm better known as Gen X Shell across my social media platforms. Most of you on here probably know me, and
Well, we might as well just John only wanted to introduce himself. He didn't want us to be
that's it.
introduced.
I don't care about any of the rest of you. I have introduced myself.
That's it.
I got to play it through. Hold on.
Yeah, now you turn the music down. The floating heads, just like out of Bohemian Rhapsody.
We got to retake some photos of ourselves.
See, this is live, and things like this happen when you're live. And somebody asked if they get paid as our fourth host. Yeah, you get paid as much as we do.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you can have all the. We'll give you a share of everything that we're going to make on this podcast. So net zero.
So, Rochelle, why don't you introduce yourself?
Once again, and hi, Life. I see your picture there. Hello to you. I am Rochelle O'Black. I'm better known as Gen X Shell. La da la la, yada yada yada. You know the rest.
And I'm Chris Clues, better known as Chris Clues, keynote speaker and author that focuses on the lessons for life and work that we can learn from 80s pop culture. And that is my third book, Raised on the 80s. Thanks, Shell.
I had it right here to give you a shameless plug.
Thank you.
You know, Chris Clues. Available on Amazon.
That's right. Great holiday gift. It is the holiday season.
All right. And this is the Three View Mirror podcast. I'm not going to play the song again. I'm going to go right into it. Chris, you have the floor, dude.
I think you should highlight John's comment first in all caps before we jump into mine, because I think I agree about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's like being back home with my childhood friends. That's exactly what we want all of you to feel whenever we do these episodes. And that's why we wanted to do them live, because we wanted to feel like we were back in our youth, having those fun, crazy conversations that we had as kids. But now we're just bringing a little bit of an adult spin to it.
Life, as far as the book, I can tell you it's available on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, all three of them, actually. Although I will just say the yellow cover one, which is my first one, not my greatest work. I personally would avoid it and go for the second two, but that's just me. So I'm a little hard on myself. All right. So let's jump into our three topics today. I'm really excited about these three because they're pretty broad, I think, and we'll be able to get some good conversation going. So the three topics that we have today, and remember, for those of you that are just joining us, we're going to have these three topics that all connect in some way, shape, or form to something, someone, or somewhere that we loved in our generation. So here we go. The three topics are the Go-Go's, after school specials, and the Brat Pack.
Mm.
The Go-Go's, after school specials, and the Brat Pack.
Very good. I like it.
All right. Today's topics are the Go-Go's, after school specials, and the Brat Pack. What order do you want to start with?
Let's start with the Go-Go's. Let's start with some music.
All right. Well, you got the beat.
All right. All right. So, okay. So first impressions of the Go-Go's. I mean, I can tell you like a little history. They started in 1978, and of course, they took us through. I mean, when I think of the Go-Go's, I think of 80s summers, early 80s, mid 80s summer music. That's for me. You know, we got the beat, Vacation. I mean, just on and on and on. How about you guys?
I think of the Go-Go's as like the quintessential pop music of the early portions of the 80s. Absolutely. Because what's her name? It's Brenda.
Belinda Carlisle.
Belinda Carlisle. Yeah, Belinda Carlisle. I knew that. I knew it. I see that's another one of those old things. But I that's what I think of when I think of the Go-Go's is you turned on a song, like you said, you were at the beach, you put up your umbrella, and you were listening to the local radio station, and no matter what, those songs were coming up.
And putting sun in your hair.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Or lemon juice.
Or lemon juice until it turned lemon. Yeah, literally. Tanning, you're out tanning, and you could think of the Go-Go's playing in the background.
For me, it was just fun. There was no weight to the music. It wasn't heavy. It wasn't trying to push an agenda or it was not controversial. It was just, to Shel's point, fun summer music. It just made you feel good. It was guilty. It was a guilty pleasure. If I'm in the car with 3 of my guy friends and We Got the Beat came on, you'd have to change the channel. You couldn't have 3 guys listening to We Got the Beat in the car moving down the road together. And although we might want to, we just wouldn't admit that we wanted to. Girl band fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when we think of the Go-Go's too, I feel like we think about them just doing a huge volume of music in the 80s and even into the 90s, but they broke up in 1985. Which
I was going to say, I don't remember them being like a long-standing thing.
I guess maybe it's the impact that their songs had. They're just so iconic and classic. Our Lips Are Sealed, We Got the Beat, Vacation. I mean, these are songs that even today, we hear them in commercials.
Yes.
They've stayed the test of time, I guess, is why I felt like they were together for a lot longer than that.
They're very commercially friendly songs too. Like whether they knew it at the time, what helped their longevity is they could be the background in commercials from everything from dish soap to pharma. It could just be used over and over and over again. And there was just some semblance of cool with them. They embodied the 80s. They had the 80s look. They were all very attractive young ladies. And it was just, if the 80s had a color, the color would be neon. And if it had a sound, to at least a small extent, the sound would be the Go-Go's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hazy Shade of Winter. I see there.
That was actually the Bangles. That was
Bangles. That's right. Yes.
That was a cover too. That was actually a cover. Hazy Shade of Winter. And it was a cover, and it was also on the soundtrack of Less Than Zero, which is the greatest soundtrack. I will argue anyone. It's the greatest soundtrack of all time. It's not close. Go look up the list of artists that were on the Less Than Zero soundtrack.
You know why I could tell you?
Because I told you.
Less Than Zero was released on November 7th back in 1987. So we're just coming up on its anniversary, which is why I did a video on Less Than Zero and specifically its soundtrack 2 days ago, Chris. Once again, we share a brain, common brain.
Yeah. What a great soundtrack. And
I like what Blister Bill said. He said, dude, why do you listen to girl bands? Because I like girls. The Go-Go's were a band that I never personally went out and bought an album for. And part of the reason was that at the time, because radio play was everything, there wasn't you could mixtape the Go-Go's and not have no problem with it because you always heard the songs. They were always on there. So I never bought an album from them.
Agreed.
And in a way, they were too poppy for me. Somebody else wrote the term poppy. Loved the songs, but I wasn't necessarily a pop kind of a girl.
I bought albums in the 80s that I wanted to hear long after they stopped their radio rotation. Mm-hmm. When it came to bands like the Go-Go's, I was perfectly fine enjoying them during their time in the sun, during their rotation, but I didn't at the time really have a need to go back and hear it again. So my collection, the songs the albums that I bought on cassette that I needed to own, that I greedily stole from Columbia House Record and Tape Club, those are the ones I wanted to hear long after the radio stopped playing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I promised everybody, somebody mentioned it earlier in the comments, I promised that I would tie punk rock into this particular week. I told you that I would do it. And the Go-Go's actually did start out in the punk rock scene. And they actually, Belinda Carlisle, under a different name, Dottie Danger, was briefly a member of the punk rock band The Germs. And if you're into punk rock, The Germs are one of the they're part of the punk rock history. Let's put it that way. So I promised that I would tie it in a little bit without going too far, because I could talk a lot more about the bands that they were around and the people that they were around in the punk rock scene. But that's really where they got their start in the late 70s, before we got to know them as the Go-Go's and the kind of poppy music that they became successful for.
The other really cool thing about that movement, popular music from the punk movement origins or whatnot, the other thing is they were somebody mentioned the water skiing, the waitress outfits. I can see the videos. They came along at a time that was perfect for them to come along, because MTV embraced their look. So when we hear the songs, we see the videos, which is very much a Gen X thing. Boomers were not enraptured with video that didn't exist at the time, and our kids don't have the video, even though YouTube is the biggest thing ever. Music videos aren't a big thing anymore now either. We're the only generation that sees the music in our memories. We hear the song, we see the video. It's simultaneous. And the Bengals were a big part of that. I remember seeing their videos on rotation.
100%. They absolutely, music video was a huge part of, I believe, they were very talented musicians, but music video, I think, propelled them so quickly. They formed in 1978. And it was 81, I think, when Beauty and the Beat came out. And that was put them on the map. And I got to believe that the music video combined with the talents just, they skyrocketed. They were overnight in a sense.
John said Devo was another one. I'm not sure if he means as far as, but he's Devo. If this is your intent, John, Devo's another one that as soon as I hear the song, I can see them. I can absolutely see them in the video.
With the cone heads, the red leveled cones on their heads, singing "Whip It Good," Da, 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 da.
Could you have even been a major influence in the music scene during the 80s if you couldn't produce the videos? If you had a face meant for radio, could you have been a video star in the 80s? Tom Petty made it.
Brian Adams made it. Look,
good-looking guy.
Yeah.
I would say, well, yeah. I don't know. My favorite video was "Hot for Teacher," but that's just me.
Yeah, that was a good video. Like as soon as you see, what's funny though? As soon as you say a title of a song, first thing I do in my head, I see the video. You're right. I see the music.
No, that is highly unique to our generation. When boomers come in, Shell and I creating content, she'll agree with me. Other generations will routinely come into our comments, and we're not gatekeepers. If you relate, I don't care how old you are. But the fact remains that for the most part, statistically speaking, that is very much, if I can point to very few things that are exclusively Gen X, seeing music is very much exclusively Gen X. The best example I'll always come back to is Thriller. We all see Thriller.
They're still doing Thriller dances.
Yes.
To this day on TikTok.
It's so cool.
And it's still cool to this day.
It's so cool. Oh yeah, somebody actually, we were talking about the MTV like face for radio. He didn't have a face for radio, but I do have to say, like, when my mom heard "Never Gonna Give You Up" and thought that had to be this Luther Vandross looking dude, and it turned out to be this Irish ginger dancing around like this, "Never gonna give you up." My mom was in shock. She didn't like the song for a couple of weeks, and then she loved it again. But she was so disappointed.
Did you just Rickroll us?
I did Rickroll you.
You just Rickrolled us.
But listen, those videos, honestly, like, look how successful he is beyond the 80s, and a lot of that is that silly video, his silly little dance. But hey, it worked.
It worked.
The other thing is that they really did push forward. Somebody mistook a song from the Bengals and attributed it to our topic of today, the Go-Go's. But they go in streaks. Like the girl band movement really started and continued on. They inspired other groups to be able to do the same thing. And then whereas the 80s, we saw a lot of girl bands, not for the first time. I know you could even call the Supremes a girl band. So it wasn't a new thing, but it definitely had a new appearance. It looked different.
Yeah.
They were like girl rock and roll bands.
Well, Heart is
not. Yeah.
It was girl led. Heart a girl band.
What?
Even though it is.
Heart?
No, I'm saying that I would certain things like girl band with the same connotation as boy band, like a boy band.
Oh, okay, yeah, got it.
Band.
They were a
That's
rock
what I'm
band.
trying to
Okay,
say.
yeah, they were a rock band. Okay, got it. That makes sense. Yeah. I guess they were definitely. I was 11. I think 11 or 12 when the Go-Go's came out, and I liked their videos. It's for sure, no doubt about it. I think until Samantha Fox came along, and then she swept me off my feet with her videos.
I had a Samantha Fox poster.
I did too.
Probably the same one.
I did not have a Samantha Fox poster.
Come on. Naughty girls need love too.
Well, without a doubt. Well, I'll just let you know you're running the show, but we are at about the 20-minute mark. So let's get in what we need. I will say that people are shouting out names in the comments like Joan Jett, like Vixen.
Vixen.
Vixen was good. I like Vixen.
Joan Jett is amazing.
Yes.
Joan Jett just had a resurgence with Maxwell House.
Wirehead. And the girls rock the stage and the instruments as heavy as the boys did. Cannot disagree with that. Hey, hot chick, glad to have you in the house.
The Bangles Bananarama. Wow, that's a great one. Expose.
Bananarama.
Yeah. The Bangles. Yeah. There's a lot. There's great ones. That's why listen, before we move on, that's why I'm so disappointed that I hope that there's a rock and roll resurgence because it feels like it's not there anymore. Maybe I'm just missing it, but I do listen to a lot of new music and I don't hear the rock that we grew up with. And there were a lot of awesome rock, women-led rock bands, whether it was the entire band or the vocalist, but a lot of them. And I'm hopeful that we're going to have a rock and roll resurgence.
Everything is siloed today. We used to make mixtapes, which meant we pulled a variety of different music from one source. We pulled from the radio, and everything we needed for that mixtape could really be found on the radio because one moment a top 40 station could be playing Dolly Parton and the next it would be Motley Crue. 3 seconds later, it'd be Kenny Loggins or Heart. Today, everything is siloed because of playlists and curated playlists. And artificial intelligence saying, well, I know what Shell likes, so I'm just going to keep feeding her the stuff that she already likes.
I know what Shell likes.
I know what Shell likes. I like it. I like it.
We've given them no evidence at all that we would like, but we might actually love. And that's what the radio did. I remember hearing songs that at first passed, I'm like, oh, I don't like that. Or maybe the first few beats, I didn't like it. But I didn't change the station because we only had 2 that came in clearly anyway. What would be the point? And by the end, it became one of the favorite songs for the time. So it's
wait, John, but mostly that's because it had to become your favorite song because of the only 2 stations. And eventually, like an earworm, some of those songs, and I will say this, the Go-Go's were like an earworm, in a lot of ways. And maybe that's why they endured, to kind of wrap up the Go-Go's there. But those 2 stations meant that you had to hear that song so often, you had no choice but to say, well, shoot, if I want to listen to music, I got to leave it on the station.
Well, and we do have a resident
Somebody got us.
in Record Hound. So Record Hounds is saying I'd better do another show from my collection. So Record Hound, I'm sure you could provide us with some of that rock music we're missing. Andy mentions the waitresses.
The waitresses, that's because we just said, I know what Shell likes.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Okay. That's enough singing for me. Jesus, I've sung Rick Astley and the waitresses. You guys are all going to leave. All right. Let's move on to the next topic. So that was the first topic. We talked about the Go-Go's. Let's see. Which one do I want to do next? Let's do the Brat Pack.
Really?
Let's talk about the Brat Pack. Yeah. All right.
John's wanting what was the second? Wait, what was our second topic again?
No, don't confuse it. We'll get to it.
Okay, we'll get to the Brat Pack. Okay, we'll do the Brat Pack now. All right.
Yeah. All right. So the Brat Pack. So the Brat Pack, just because we think of all these different people that were really kind of part of it, but the core was really Emilio Estevez, Anthony Michael Hall, Rob Lowe, Andrew McCarthy, Demi Moore, Judd Nelson, Molly Ringwald, Ali Sheedy. That was the core of the Brat Pack. That's how it's defined, at least in most of the research that I did.
Yeah, I would agree.
A lot of them really hated that connotation that, they've said in interviews, I believe it was Molly Ringwald and potentially Andrew McCarthy that said they hadn't liked the label that got put on them as the Brat Pack.
Andrew McCarthy loathed it. He credited for helping destroy his career.
Yeah.
Didn't bother him so much that 40 years later he didn't try. He made a documentary bringing it back.
Oh, that's right. I did not watch it.
Yeah. It is what you make of it. So Rob Lowe, even in the documentary, is like, I don't get what the big deal is. Yeah. He didn't care. It didn't bother him. Didn't bother him because Rob Lowe maintained a career all the way through. Right. Yep. Whereas it seems to me those that had a dip in their career pointed and said it's because of that label. Those who stayed consistent. And listen, there were people on the outside that says I would have given anything back then to have been brought into that label because you guys were it. You were the cool kids at the cafeteria table.
Yeah.
So to be sitting there and moaning about that title seems a little disingenuous. Yeah. It's like I'm too popular.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. James Spader is one that comes to mind. I mean, it's also surprising that somebody like Robert Downey Jr. wasn't part of that as well. I mean, he was the thing that's interesting about him is he turned out probably out of all of them to be the best actor, like overall performance. And he was getting these little parts. So he was like, he was in Weird Science as one of the bullies is like, there's a white sail at Tau World after they, throw the shakes on him. And he was in Lesson Zero. And I think he was in Back to School maybe. But, he had all these little bit parts that didn't add up until later. I mean, he's having some issues too, but ultimately it's kind of interesting. He ended up being the one. Maybe James Spader. James Spader is, I don't know. It's weird to me with James Spader how he didn't end up becoming bigger because he's so good. He's so talented.
I don't know.
Good
Sometimes
stuff
I
on
think
television through the 90s and even the 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes I think, maybe fame got to some of these people too. Like you wanted to fade into the backdrop a little bit because it was just too much. I mean, I think there's a certain type of person that can handle the level of fame that some of them were burst into as literal, like, I don't know what the youngest was in like St. Elmo's Fire. I don't know what their ages were in that. And, because all I ever think of in St. Elmo's Fire. And by the way, just to comment on Andrew McCarthy, I know why his career didn't go anywhere because I think after a while, all of us girls, and he was, a girl kind of a, attraction, that we wanted to see the guys, you guys wanted to see the girls. We all got kind of tired of this, the blinky, the thing, like, I don't know. We got tired of it.
Well,
the sad face.
The what?
The sad face he always gave.
He played it tight. He played it tight for sure.
Yeah,
he played it tight.
And then he got typecast, and then
we were like, okay, Andrew McCarthy's crying again. All right, we get it.
So that Richard made a good comment that I just showed, speaking to The Breakfast Club, which, like a lot of John Hughes movies, that one specifically really spoke to our generation, about our generation, for our generation. But there were other movies that the Brat Pack was in that I think spoke about us at a different time in our lives as well. Breakfast Club did it phenomenally in high school. I remember watching St. Elmo's Fire a little bit later on in my youth and be like, wow, that really resonates. In a stupid, angsty way. Like Demi Moore had a line that I never thought I could feel so tired at 25. And she's sitting in the room. And I mean, it's so angsty and cringy now. It's like, all right, just wait another 30 years, then come talk to me. But at the time, it's like, all right, it rang true.
Yeah.
I just to say something, I know she wasn't part of the Brat Pack, but I always admired Mare Winningham. I admired her and I thought she was wonderful. Oh, Weekend at Bernie's absolutely was. We still every once in a while make jokes about Weekend at Bernie's. That was definitely good.
Yeah. You mentioned Mare Winningham, and it's interesting you do because she is mentioned as one that was kind of like in this subset that could have technically been part of it. And they list a bunch of other actors and actresses that would be considered like, I don't know, on the periphery of the Brat Pack. And interestingly enough, I think some of them did more than the Brat Pack did in the 80s. So you've got people that they talk about like Kevin Bacon, Matthew Broderick, John Cryer, John and Joan Cusack, Nicolas Cage, Jamie Gertz, Mary Stuart Masterson, Sean Penn, Kiefer Sutherland, Leah Thomas, and of course, Mare Winningham. And you think about that list, and there's a handful in that list that were much more influential in the 80s. I think The Breakfast Club, just because several of them were in The Breakfast Club, and St. Elmo's Fire, I think those two movies just created this group.
So the big part of the whole Brat Pack was, for those that maybe don't know the background on this, it was termed from a journalist. Basically, there was a journalist that was following Emilio Estevez around for a few days and had access to him. And Emilio Estevez was granting him this interview and really thought the guy was like a buddy and maybe opened up more than he should have. And some of the things he said started coming across as entitled and bratty. And the journalist took it and ran and published, which was something that was really not really favorable to them. But in terms of the Brat Pack moniker, it wasn't so much saying, hey, here's a group of kids that are making movies or that are accomplished. Or it was creating a story that they hung out together, that they visited each other in their mansions and partied all night and drank and it just wasn't true. Like Rob Lowe goes, I went years without seeing you guys. If we weren't doing a movie, we weren't friends. but they created this story that the core that you're talking about, Chris, were more than just actors at the time. They were friends and they were hanging out and they were being bratty about it.
And it sells the movies then too. I mean, St. Elmo's Fire, like that was your like early 20s, moving on with life. Some people like that movie hit me at around those ages, or I remember watching it at those ages. And I absolutely adore that movie. I venture to say I like it better than The Breakfast Club because it resonated more with me at that particular time in my life. I can still, what do they say? Booga, 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 ha, 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 and I could still, and again, kind of like the music videos from the first segment, I can still see that in my mind. I could see them in the car when somebody's hanging out of the car. I can't remember who it is now, but I could see it in my mind.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, for the 80s was such, again, I'm so biased about the 80s, but it was such an interesting decade, and the Brat Pack was so core and such a quintessential piece of it. And we think about a documentary coming out just a few months ago about that particular time and how interesting it is that people are still curious about it. And I think they always will be. And I mean, maybe there's a 90s Brat Pack, maybe there's a 2000s Brat Pack, but you think about the Brat Pack, and then before them, there was the Rat Pack, right? It was the, Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. I don't know. Like, is there another group that had a nickname like that when you say it, it immediately resonates and takes you either back to a time or somebody who maybe wasn't around in the 80s? They know the Brat Pack. They may not know all the players, but oh yeah, I've heard of the Brat Pack.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, just to touch on what you said about St. Elmo's Fire, one of my favorite movies as well. My nephew goes to school in Washington, and the last time we were there, we stopped by this bar called The Tombs in Georgetown. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, God, just something about this place is just resonating with me. And it was so cool to be there. And I was probably there a good 30 minutes before it dawned on me. I'm like, holy crap. This felt exactly like that. And then I looked it up, and that's the bar that St. Elmo's was built on. That was the idea. That's where it came from. And then they did the externals down the road, so I got to see that place as well. But it was really cool to be sitting there and being like, wow, this is that place. And it's still there. I would recommend anybody that loves the movie, go check it out. It's really neat to be sitting there.
Will do.
So what else about the Brat Pack? I mean, I think about the individual players, and the one that has always, I think, I talked about James Spader and what he's done or not, what he's done and how he's kind of underrated under the radar. But the guy that surprises me is Anthony Michael Hall, because the run that he had, I mean, wow. And he was his comedic timing and the way that his comedy, his acting was so good at such a young age. And then after like Johnny Be Good, it just kind of, he had Edward Scissorhands and Johnny Be Good. And then it just kind of, I don't know, it just went away. But that little run that he had with 16 Candles and Vacation and Weird Science, and it was spectacular. And he was really, really good at it.
He was in something recently though, wasn't he?
Halloween H2O or something, or the Halloween Ends or something. Yeah.
He was more recent than that. I think he was just on TV somewhere, or will be, something like that. Thing with Anthony Michael Hall for me is he pulled the Jennifer Grey. He became unrecognizable to me. So I liked him in a certain way. He was the goofy kid. Then all of a sudden, Johnny Be Good, I'm like, what the hell? And I'm like, he
wasn't Farmer Ted anymore.
He's the kid I beat up in school to being the kid that beat me up. I'm like, that's just not right.
He wasn't Farmer Ted anymore.
So there's that.
I think, and one of them I think it's C. Thomas Howell, was just in a TV show very recently on Netflix. And it was a surprising TV show, by the way. It was on Netflix. I mean, we're talking full male frontal nudity and stuff like that, And he was like the old drunk dude with a beard. And I cannot think of the show name. I watched the whole thing.
I know what you're talking about. It was one season.
Yeah. Okay. And I watched it and I'm like, that guy looks really familiar, but man, he's so old. Like, what is it? And he's probably our age. But it was a good show, but I was like, oh my goodness, that's C. Thomas Howell. It was surprising to me. Somebody in the
follow him on
comments will
social
know.
media. It's shocking. The big
Mhm.
white beard.
Mm-hmm.
So he actually is really interesting because I don't know if I've mentioned the Outsiders House Museum on the podcast before or on the show before, but if you are ever in Tulsa, Oklahoma, around Tulsa, Oklahoma, there is the Outsiders House Museum. It was founded actually. Danny Boy, it's a long story I won't get into, but Danny Boy O'Connor from House of Pain, he actually loved the Outsiders growing up, and he restored the house along with other people. And now it's the Outsiders House Museum, and all these people come. It's just tourist destination. But C. Thomas Howell does concerts there. He plays guitar, and it's really cool. And he's actually pretty good. And so if you're ever around Tulsa, or maybe you live out that way, and the Outsiders House Museum, you can look them up, outsidershousemuseum.com or .org, one of the two. And mentioning C. Thomas Howell. So I saw what he had looked like for a while, actually. The Hitcher is a great C. Thomas Howell movie.
Yeah, I love that movie. The last thing I'm going to say on Brat Pack, and it doesn't mean we're moving on, this is just something I wanted to make sure I got in here, is what resonated with me with the Breakfast Club was that I saw this version of us on screen. And it like we've said it a million times, no matter which of those cliques we fell into, or all of them at different points of our lives, it resonated. The Brat Pack itself resonated in a similar way, not because I saw myself, but all of a sudden I was that high school kid being like, these are the cool kids I want to be friends with. These are the people I wanted to be. And they were just cool. And watching the documentary, I find out that it wasn't really that they were doing all the things that the impression was, but they were the cool kids I wanted to really be. And then we got to see them in movies that, at least in the personas they were playing, and then later on in real life, they were struggling too. So it's like, hey, even the most popular kids, even the coolest kids, even the prettiest kids, they're struggling too.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them did.
It does remind me a lot about, and I don't know what it's like. I'm not in high school at this moment, but cliques were huge. I mean, and I don't even have, my kids aren't even in a high school at this moment. And I don't know that cliques, for me, cliques were so huge back in the day. And it was really hard sometimes to go from, we like the geeks, the jocks, the princess, all that. It was a very definitive thing in growing up in the 80s, 90s. And then I don't know, did it fade away? And that would be a good question. I would ask people in the audience for their reaction. Did it fade away? Are there still cliques? I know there's still some, but is it as big as it was when we were younger?
I'm sure it is.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
it seems
there'll always be cliques.
There'll always be some, but like we were defined by our cliques. I mean, it was what clothing you wore, how you wore your hair. It was all of those things. And I know there's still some of that exists, but it seems to me to be a little bit more of a melting pot now with pockets of people that are in a clique.
We almost selectively put ourselves into them. And maybe that's just my experience, but you found people you were comfortable with. You found a look you emulated. You found a group of your people, and we called this staying in our lane. And some of the people like me, I would move back and forth between a couple different ones based on circumstance. But for the most part, a lot of us liked to stay in our lanes. And I know there's people that were victims of bullying, and that's different. Today, what I'm hearing is there's less in terms of cliques and just more that you're in or you're out. You're popular or you're not.
Oh.
Wirehead has an excellent comment right there. He said, we had cliques and now it's about clicks. And that's a very profound, I think, way to even go on into the next topic, because it's true. All right. Yeah.
All right there, Voltaire. That's that's really good. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's how they determine who's liked. Maybe I don't know. I don't have kids, so I can't comment. But I just assume that cliques are always going to kind of be around to a certain extent.
Well, I'm sure it is, but like I said, from what social media has kind of shown all our kids what they should look like, and it's not forgiving, and it's not saying it's okay to look like this and it's okay to look like that. It's very much more streamlined. So there's the in and then there's the out. There's it is what it is. Question for you, Chris. Kristen's asking, do you know where to watch Less Than Zero? Can't find it anywhere. I looked for it. No. I can find it on non-streaming services. Like I found it on my Android TV box, but I don't know anywhere else you can find it. A movie like that, I'd say go buy the DVD.
Mm-hmm.
I'm buying more and more DVDs because I never want to get to a point where I'm asking, where can I see Blazing Saddles? Because I'm pretty sure there's going to be a day when the answer is going to be nowhere. Yeah. No one should be watching that movie. So I own it. Yeah. So no one can tell me I can't watch it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know where actually, I was just kind of looking it up to see if it was like right up there where you could actually watch it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it doesn't look like it's on any of the streaming services.
Which doesn't surprise me given the content, and it could be viewed as problematic.
Well, you know, Lesson Zero
warnings in there.
Lesson Zero is written by Bret Easton Ellis, who also wrote American Psycho. So, you know, yeah, he's a hell of a writer, but he writes about some tough stuff.
Record Hound just said too with that it now, like, we grew up with clicks, but now it's all about pops and clicks. And what you damage rolling out of bed in the morning, right. You know what I mean? So.
Record Hound, I will say I disagree with you. Get stretching, get moving, don't fall into that. You sound like Rice Krispies before breakfast. It's time to do something about it.
All right, are we ready to move on to our final topic?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we talked about the Go-Go's. We talked about the Go-Go's. We talked about the Brat Pack. And now we're going to talk about after-school specials in general. Not any one particular episode, just the idea of after-school specials, because it is something that we all it went beyond when we grew up a few years, but it is something that we all grew up with, and it's the same thing with it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? The milk cartons with the missing kids. These things that we look back on and we're like, this is what we grew up with, and no other no generation really did beyond ours. And first thoughts with after school specials.
I just wrote it down right here. The big after school special, since you said you wanted to bring punk into this, was the day my kid turned punk. Yeah, the day my kid went punk, and it had like the dad from Alf, but I can't remember who the kid was.
Wasn't it the kid from the Super? He was. I think Wirehead may be able to confirm this. I think he's a Canadian actor, and I'm pretty sure he also played in the sitcom series where he was a superhero. I just can't remember his name.
I can't remember either, but I could see that literal like advertisement for that after school special, like, because that was a problem back then that your kid would turn punk and get the spike of green hair down the middle, because that was the stereotypical punk back in the day. Yeah,
he looked like Johnny Rotten.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I took the liberty, just because they were so. Without even prefacing it, here are some titles. High School Narc, My Mom's Having a Baby, Please Don't Hit Me, Mom. Have You Ever Been Ashamed of Your Friends? It Must Be Love Because I Feel So Dumb. The aforementioned The Day My Kid Went Punk. The Skating Rink. Backwards, The Riddle of Dyslexia. Daddy Can't Read. Mom and Dad Can't Hear Me. And there was at least one or two about drinking. Like, I can't. If Chachi was drunk every other week on an after-school special, Scott Baio was big on those.
Because this was literally how our parents paid for therapy for us. They just paid the cable bill, or it was on the free channels. The free channels, yeah. But this was the only way that we were going to get raised as kids, is to sit there and we were going to get raised as kids, was to learn our lessons through some sort of a TV show, because mom and dad weren't talking to you about not going punk. They just said, they would say something simple to you like, don't go punk. And that was it. You know what I mean? And that was our therapy.
Yeah. I mean, even some of the other titles is My Dad Can't Be Crazy. Can he? Just Tipsy, Honey. Tattle, When to Tell on a Friend. I mean, this is like, it's hilarious.
There's something wrong with Amelia.
I hate the way I look.
Yeah.
So we always had the very special episodes of Family Ties, a very special episode of The Cosby Show. These were just special episodes.
Yeah.
That's it. Their entire premise was that they were special episodes every single time they came on. And I don't remember thinking they were funny. But now I've done research to use these as content. They're unintentionally hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've seen several of them where, like, I Justine Bateman, she's drinking on, Stoned.
This is the one I was referencing, and I saw it just recently. I just couldn't remember it. It's literally just called Stoned, and it's Scott Baio doing the worst impersonation of what it's like to be high.
It's, I mean,
with Ronald, it's definitely worth a rewatch.
It was like an extension of Reefer Madness back in the 50s and 60s when they were trying to teach kids not to smoke pot. And then they just took it to a whole new level with the after school specials and all of the different
Jay Underwood, that was his name. M169 got it. It is definitely Jay Underwood.
Okay.
That's your punk kid.
That's the punk kid. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
That still doesn't help me though. That still does not help me. Like
Canadian.
Okay. Yeah.
They were called after school specials, but I don't remember ever running home because I was excited to watch the after school special. I now that I go back and watch them, like, were they really making these for kids? Because, or for the, did they actually think these were going to teach us lessons? Because they were ridiculous. And I feel like they would have been better suited to market to parents in some way, because I think they were trying to, in their own weird way, like, hey, watch out for these signs in your kids. But I don't know, like, it didn't work.
It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your kids are? That was they were definitely marketed towards the parents, so the parents could make their guilt a little lessened at the idea that they weren't home, and if they were home, weren't really concerned about anything that was going on at that point.
I got to take the other side a little bit on this. Number one, they did a really good job of reaching out to actors that we would recognize to put in them. So when Maureen McCormick and Bobby Knight, both from Brady Bunch, or Scott Baio would be in these, and Christy McNichol did a few, it drew us to the show because we recognized the actors and actresses, number one. Number two, I got to disagree on the sense that, yes, maybe they were badly written. Yes, maybe they were almost laughable, but they still normalized the discussion around child abuse, around SA, around drinking and in adolescence. And yeah, we scoffed at it. And no, I don't think we learned any major lessons, but it opened the door that if you needed to know that it was okay to have these feelings, at least no one was telling us it was okay to have any feelings, even if in a laughable way. These shows were saying, hey, listen, if this is happening, it's not just you.
Yeah.
And I think they succeeded in that.
You may be alone watching it because no one's home when you're watching the after school
in between beatings, but you're not the only one being beaten.
But you're not alone. Yeah.
Well,
there was no phone number at the end that said, if you're being beaten, call this number for help. That didn't exist. But I mean, at least you know you're not alone.
They spent all this money on these productions, and honestly, Mr. Yuck, the sticker, taught me more than those after school specials. Like, I will never forget Mr. Yuck teaching me not to drink things, because as a kid, I was really stupid, and I used to drink or eat anything. I didn't really care. So my parents had
so much.
Well, they had the problem is I liked Mr. Yuck, and so it took one time where I drank something that had Mr. Yuck sticker on it because I liked it. I was stupid, like 4 years old, and I'm like, oh, Mr. Yuck is cool. So I drank it, Poison Center, pump stomach, and then my parents started putting the Mr. Yuck on the milk and the orange juice, and then I would consume it because I like Mr. Yuck. So Mr. Yuck was much more, I don't know, for me, it just had a more of an impression on me than the after school specials.
I only watched the after school specials because that's all that was on at that particular time. You know, you came home, you watched it, and it was usually your wind down time from the post school time, or I got to do my homework, or dinner's about to, I got to have dinner. It was your wind down time. And, they didn't leave a lasting impression on me in any way, but at least it was something. So we watched them not because we wanted to. I think it was because it was literally not a lot of choices.
And wind down means something very different.
What's that? I didn't hear you.
Can you hear it?
What is that?
This is the sound of the after-school special music.
Oh, it is?
It always goes da 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 da, and then the little gumballs go down the thing. I mean, it's on YouTube if anyone wants to see it. I probably just got a copyright strike.
Don't worry, it was staticky.
Good.
I mean, listen,
with me. The thing with Mr. Yuck, I'll say the irony in Mr. Yuck is it would have been more effective had the teachers sent the Mr. Yuck stickers directly to the parents and said, please put these on poison. They came directly at us kids, and we were told to go label. So we labeled our own stuff, which kind of defeated the purpose. If I knew that I shouldn't drink bleach enough to put a sticker on it, then I wouldn't have been drinking it in the first place.
It kind of reminds me of there for a couple of years when McDonald's did their stickers hot and ready just for you. And it became a big problem in the high schools when they would go and they would put these on certain people's lockers. I was a teacher at the time, and that's what they would do. They'd put hot and ready just for you, just to, slut shame some of the girls. Terrible. It was terrible. They should not put stuff in the hands of kids. I'd really like that.
Well, I guess if I kind of take a step back and I think about what John said about the after school specials, it was, I guess, in a way, it was a good way to reach us because, Shell mentioned that was what was on when we came home. There were 3 channels. There were 3 stations. If you're lucky, you had basic cable at some point, but you didn't have a whole lot to choose from. So they had a captured audience and they used it to try to at least, try to teach us something, anything. I don't know, but.
And it reminds me of the break-ins on Saturday morning. Oh, sorry, John. No, it reminds me of the break-ins on Saturday morning cartoons as well. With the what they call those, the minute.
The more you know.
The more you know, yeah. And they would break in with those, and it was the same thing. It was all life lessons and the things that we were supposed to learn. Yeah.
The more you know. There were the little snippets where Bugs Bunny was telling us to turn pot handles, keep pot handles turned in. Mm-hmm. We were constantly being given these things. There was Time for Timer, which told us about positive snacks and eating. This was when I say raised by television, people are like, we didn't watch a lot of television. Us extras were outside all the time. No, we weren't. I mean, a lot of us were outside a lot. I get that. But if I start singing cartoon commercial jingles, everyone's singing along. We watched a lot of TV and it raised us. It taught us lessons, and if you don't get a lot out of after school specials, but I promise you, if I'd happened to see the dyslexia episode, that's probably the first and only time I ever heard about that. That's where I would have learned it. Nobody else was having these discussions with us.
No. Yeah, I guess in a way it was like the next stage. So we had, Sesame Street and the Electric Company.
Yep.
And if you were lucky enough to have the Great Space Coaster, which was my favorite, no news is good news without Gary Gnu. But then we graduated from that, and there was a void. And that void was filled by the after school specials because our parents sure weren't going to talk to us about this stuff. And maybe it's a little different now.
So I don't know. Do they do things like that today? I think in some of the cartoons and things, there's, lessons. And John always talks about how like Caillou, oh my God, it would blow my mind with Caillou. That whiny little brat. But they learn that stuff then through dedicated television shows. I think now, like Barney taught kids a lot of stuff through the years, and all of the, so I don't think it's unique to our generation that those things were there, but it might have began with us because I don't recall too much, life lesson stuff because it was all very up to a certain point, it was all very staged and structured. All the television shows were, and then they became freer to teach life lessons. Maybe in the 70s. I don't know. Would you agree? That's my thought. In the 60s, you were to leave it to Beaver.
TV wasn't directed at children in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. It was directed at adults, and the censor's job was to make sure that it wasn't offensive to children.
Correct.
But it certainly wasn't created for young people. Right. 70s and 80s, that definitely changed. Number one, because laws changed, allowing them to market to us. Number two, because for the first time, we actually had money. Gen Xers started working at a very young age. We are a very entrepreneurial little generation. 9 years old, babysitting. We had money. and our parents weren't around, so we sometimes took theirs too. But yeah, I think you're right. It wasn't before us, and I'll say it's not after us. I don't think you'll see as much of it anymore because kids aren't watching TV as much anymore. They have apps that'll teach them how to tell time. It's not TV giving these lessons anymore.
There's a whole lot of gaming and things like that.
Yep.
Social gaming that is a big portion of that, and you're only getting peer to peer. We were getting top down recommendations of life lessons, whether it be top down from parents or top down from the television. But today, I think some of the problem is, if I could speak socially about some of the problems in society, is that a lot of things that kids they're getting it from their peers and each other. And not all of it's good. Whereas we got Captain Kangaroo, wholesome and wonderful. And I don't know that there's, kids skip over that stuff now.
Yeah. And, somebody mentioned in earlier about some of the people that, we've mentioned Scott Baio, but some of the people that were in these after school specials, and there were a lot of them. I mean, Michelle Pfeiffer, Val Kilmer, Marissa Tomei, Jessica Alba, Freddie Prinze Jr., Jodie Foster, Sarah Jessica Parker, Rob Lowe, Cynthia Nixon, Jennifer Grey, Kira Sedgwick, Viggo Mortensen, Malcolm Jamal Warner, Ben Affleck, Helen Hunt, Justine Bateman, somebody mentioned. I mean, there's huge list.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, and it was intentional. They put people on there to get our attention. It wasn't just before they became big. Scott Baio was on an after-school special while being Chachi.
A lot of them, though, were getting their start, though. A lot of them were getting their start.
Some of them were before, but I'd be willing to bet that ABC with younger people, probably something in their contract, because ABC was also where Happy Days was. I wouldn't be surprised to find that if they're like, you also have to do this or do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool that it was, that not just that, but it was also like a vehicle for some of them as well to kind of to get their start. And looking back, that's kind of cool too.
Oh, someone mentioned Mr. Rogers, the man. Like, if I could go back in time and meet one man,
yeah,
it would be him. I grew up on him. I loved him. And Mr. Wizard. I loved Mr. Wizard. You didn't know Mr. Wizard? Maybe it was Mr. just Wizard. Because Mr. Rogers was PBS at the time. He was the local broadcasting thing, and perhaps Mr. Wizard was a Pittsburgh thing. I don't even know, but Mr. Wizard was a science dude, and he inspired me actually to study science in my life, because he did these cool experiments where water changed blue, and I thought it was the coolest thing.
I mean, you like Mr. Rogers. I preferred Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood.
Mr. Rogers, just I don't know. I'm not going to say anything. He was an amazing person.
You didn't watch Mr. Rogers?
As a kid, I didn't like him. I didn't like the whole trolley thing. The
really?
Muppets creeped me the hell out. Him coming in the house and changing his shoes. He just gave me creeper vibes.
Blasphemy.
For so many kids, he was. I loved when he changed his shoes and his sweater, because he was consistency. Sometimes in a chaotic life, to be honest, for a lot of kids. And he was the consistency for all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was an amazing human being, without a doubt. I'm just telling you, to my younger self, he just gave me the creeper vibe.
Somebody said Professor Proton. We've got a Big Bang Theory person in the audience. Yep. Bob Newhart, Professor Proton. That's awesome. Okay. So have we kind of gone through the three categories, do you think?
Yeah, I'd say so. Lady Elaine was creepy as fuck, Gina.
Lady Elaine was horrible, I will admit. And I got really tired. I can't even remember the name now of the little squirrel / whatever, the tiger. Can't even think of the name of it. Got real tired of that one, but yeah.
Yeah, Lady Elaine. God, now I'm going to have nightmares. Okay. So I'm going to wake up in the middle of the night. She's going to be in the corner of my room.
Hey, listen, someday I'm going to look like Lady Elaine. I'm pretty sure. We're all going to end up looking like Lady Elaine.
Next Halloween.
Male virgin,
Next Halloween. All right. So a soft kitty, warm kitty, little ball of fur. Oh, man. I love the Big Bang Theory. I really do.
I'm actually just
Okay.
getting into. I'm in second season of Young Sheldon, third season maybe. We
Oh, it's so good. It's really good. It's well done. It's well done. Yeah,
I'm enjoying it.
It's really well done.
All right, man. So that's our 3 topics.
Until you realize that the father, young Sheldon's father, was actually a bully in Big Bang Theory. He was Leonard's bully from high school, but then he's actually Sheldon's dad too. All right, so here we go. The three topics were the Go-Go's, the Brat Pack, and after school specials. What is the connection?
I can connect to a lot of different ways. I'm having a hard time running a string through all 3.
I do not have enough knowledge of the background of the Go-Go's to be able to connect. To connect the Go-Go's to anything. But literally, like when you make a list of all the people in the Brat Pack and all the people who were, like you're mentioning, the people that were in the after school specials, the only thing I can think of is there's someone. I know there's someone. I feel like this one is about someone rather than something or music, but I cannot connect it.
I mean, I know Rob Lowe was an after-school special, and of course he was in the Brat Pack. I don't think he was a member of the Go-Go's, but he probably slept with Belinda Carlisle because at one point,
everyone.
I'm sure Rob Lowe was sleeping with everyone but the 3 of us. So, is the connection people that Rob Lowe's thing was in? Then maybe that works. Punk. You said that the Go-Go started out as punk. There was an after-school special about the kid who was punk. Mm-hmm. And the Brat Pack, I mean, if I had to guess, I'd somehow say that it's punk because you really wanted to lean into punk. And I'm thinking that's the connection. I just don't know how to get Breakfast Club into it, except maybe Ducky, who was almost in the Brat Pack, kind of looked punkish. No, I got it. I don't have that.
Mm-mm. No, I'm sitting there and I'm trying to think of if he were going to do anything punk, he would choose the largest of the punk bands because, like you mentioned, that Belinda Carlisle was in the Germs. I wasn't a punk person, so I wouldn't have known that. So then I'm thinking, Dead Kennedys, Sex Pistols, things like that. But none of that goes at all together.
The Go-Go had been caught on camera being adult time and did end up being a real life after school special. Irish, you lost me. Was Belinda Carlisle caught on tape doing adulty things? Because I know Rob Lowe was.
Kids getting the beat.
Well, G the OG, that can be the connection on any topic.
We could always just get back to kids getting beat.
The Go-Go's were infamously amorous. Daniel says the connection is Kevin Bacon.
Every connection could be Kevin Bacon. Honestly.
6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Yeah.
Give us a clue.
Okay. So you're on the right track. It is someone. And
I'll go Anthony Michael Hall an awful lot.
I'll go further and say it is someone from the Brat Pack, clearly.
And she must have dated, Belinda Carlisle must have dated someone from the Brat Pack who then appeared in an after-school special.
You're getting close.
Getting close.
It's Ali Sheedy.
I wish Belinda Carlisle dated Ali Sheedy.
You are such boys.
In my mind, she did.
You saw it many. Speaking of seeing things in the music, you saw that in your mind. Yeah, they bopped a lot.
She bop.
Was it Rob Lowe?
I mean, we've given everybody enough time, so
Rob Lowe's the only one I know definitively was in an after-school special. I literally just took a piece of it for a video 3 days ago.
Mm-hmm. It was Rob Lowe, or it is Rob Lowe. He was actually in a music video at the Go-Go's called "Turn to You," and the reason he was in that video is because he was the Go-Go's boy toy. All of the Go-Go's, apparently.
Well, I got it then.
So
right.
Things that Rob Lowe was in.
Infinitely amorous.
He was in the Brat Pack. He was in an after-school special, and he was in the
Go-Go's.
There's a great. I didn't know this. I was trying to find a connection to somebody in the Brat Pack that would make it a little bit difficult, so I could talk about the Brat Pack. And I saw this video where he was talking about people call in asking questions on a podcast, and they asked him about I saw this clip of you in a video called Turn to You with the Go-Go's, and he started laughing. He's like, oh my God, I haven't seen that video in forever. And then he's like, okay, do you want to hear the story? Do you want it G-rated, NC-17, PG? Because I'll give it to you. And he told the story of how he ended up in the Go-Go's video, and he was hanging out with all of them for quite a while back in his day.
Hanging in with them, and yeah.
He was bad, dude. He was bad. I'll never forget during the Democrat National Convention, he was a delegate on the floor. And that night, during I think it might have been Clinton's first campaign, he ended up upstairs with like a minor and got videotaped. I mean, it was tougher to be released on a sex tape back then, because it's not like everybody had a phone to get. You had to set up a camcorder, a tripod. You had to put the VHS tape in there. You had to get the focus. I mean, you had to work to get a leak going back then. And the guy worked it. It was there.
I do remember that. I was going to bring that up, but I didn't know a discreet way to bring up his amorous ways.
Well, he was, the thing about him is that he had this reinvention back when it was more difficult to have these reinventions. He reinvented himself. And one thing I really like about Rob Lowe, at least as he got a little bit older and even in the mid 90s, that he's very self-deprecating. And, he is this guy that looks like, we talk about the people that we think are vampires, potentially a vampire. The guy, I know he's getting work done, I'm sure, but he looks amazing. He's a great looking dude, and he's still to this day. And I think about, for me, the moment that Rob Lowe turned to me and I was like, man, this guy's pretty cool, was Tommy Boy. And that was a role that was really unexpected for a guy like that, to play kind of the second fiddle and the guy that was like the bad guy that nobody really liked, and he wasn't really playing off of his looks that much, and he had to share these scenes with Chris Farley, who is just like this massive presence when it comes to any scene that he was in, and he made fun of himself in that movie. And that scene where, where they go cow tipping, and he's spraying him off with the hose, and he's like, oh, I got mud on me. He's like, that's not mud, Chucko. And then he starts spraying him off, and he's like, he's a maniac. Maniac's like, did you eat paint chips when you were a kid? I don't know. That just turned my impression of him around when he did that character.
Ronald said Rob Lowe even dated Bubbles. Bubbles the chimp. True story. I would not doubt it.
I forgot somebody mentioned that he dated Melissa Gilbert. I'd forgotten about that. They were a thing for a long time, and she was like as nice as a nice girl got. That's Laura Ingalls, for crying out loud.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. He was number 2 in Austin Powers.
That's the movie I was going to say. He did an unbelievable impression of Heart to Heart guy, Robert Wagner. His Robert Wagner was absolutely spot on throughout that entire film.
Yeah.
And great in The West Wing, and just has always been present.
Mm-hmm. Wayne's World.
I'm taking at least 3/4 of a point on this one.
Yeah, you get 3/4 of a point. You got there. You definitely got there. And in a
lot of ways with this conversation. I'm just saying, you got there. That's right. I was trying to come up with a joke about 3/4, but yeah.
No, he went all in.
He went all in.
Yeah, I'm just, I think when you watch somebody evolve like he has, and went through the 80s, did his thing, had some interesting times, we'll say, and still to this day, he's very present and he's very relevant in pop culture, and he's really, you think about all the people in the Brat Pack, what directions they went or didn't go. And, who in the Brat Pack at this point right now is, still consistently working, even though a lot of his stuff is with, Atkins, but still, like, who's consistently working, and it's kind of impressive.
In the prairie.
I forget it. I got to behave myself. You guys are tempting me to go in a direction that I'm all too happy to go in, and I do not want to.
Like renaming television shows to make it so that Rob Lowe and give them their what are you allowed to say? Corn, give them their corn.
Oh no, where are we going?
They're not corn. That's the code word for porn. You know what I mean? So, turning. You didn't do that? I'm not talking about corning anymore. Not my corning thing. No. Yeah. Okay, never mind.
What I loved about Rob Lowe,
what is happening?
Back to Brat Pack, is of everybody interviewed about that era in time, Rob Lowe took it. He such a cool guy. He remains so cool. He was joking. He's like Andrew McCarthy's like, oh my God, it's so good to see you. And McCarthy's like, so how did it make you feel? Did you feel like it was demeaning? Like it was reducing us as actors? And Rob Lowe's like, I really didn't take it that seriously. He's like, we make movies, because Andrew McCarthy's like, we're actors and it's an art. And, and Rob Lowe's like, dude, take it down a notch. We made movies. It's not a big deal. We're fortunate enough that we got to play pretend and made millions of dollars doing it. Mm-hmm. The fact that a journalist called us the Brat Pack really isn't something to hold onto for 30 years and be upset about from your mansion. Yeah. Which it didn't look like he has a mansion anymore. I don't know. I think Andrew McCarthy might have fallen on some bad times. He was renting a car and it wasn't even that nice.
Did you hear my dog coming down the stairs there? Sorry. He came down like a bat out of hell.
Oh, somebody mentioned Oxford Blues. Man, I forgot about that one. That's a nice pick. Nice crowd. Oh, God.
I saw that comment too. I was like,
did you see I did a video. I forget it.
Oh,
raw dogging. Raw dogging doesn't mean what we think it means anymore.
What's it mean now?
Walking without AirPods, going on a plane and not watching a movie, wearing
That's not what it means.
Wearing sandals without socks, doing one thing without another. I could not believe when I saw trends on TikTok with kids raw dogging. And there's this one kid specific is like, my sister came up to me. I was on the beach just sitting in the sand. And my sister's like, why are you raw dogging without me? And I'm like, sweet home Alabama.
What? Oh yeah, but that had a whole nother meaning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I first saw it when
dogging. It brought that back to me.
I first saw that actually because they were talking about where they go on a plane and they don't have water, they don't have no video, no audio, no water, no nothing. You just sit there and stare at the seat.
And they're like, health professionals say that raw dogging can be hazardous to your health. I'm like, well, in the era of AIDS, it certainly was.
Rob Lowe was raw dogging like you said, raw dogging a long time ago.
It's funny how we can say raw dogging without being censored. Yes, because somebody goes, no, that's not what it means. So that video did very well for me.
I imagine.
Words change. Masquerade, another good Rob Lowe movie. More of a whodunit if you've never seen it. Pretty good. Meg Tilly, the smarter of the Tillys. Meg Tilly was in that one.
I didn't know there was a smarter Tilly versus a non-smart Tilly. So.
Jennifer Tilly.
Oh yeah, she's a little Disney.
Meg Tilly. And if they're watching, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. What's the chances though, right?
Oh, my luck.
All right, so that's
the episode.
That was the. I feel like it ended a few minutes ago.
We went down
It's down a tunnel. Road to go down.
We went down a tunnel that we shouldn't have gone down. Just like Rob Lowe did. Many, many tunnels.
Class was a good one. And
Class was a good one. Yep. Yeah, Class was
that one.
Class was actually really good.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Andrew McCarthy was in it too. Andrew McCarthy does this in it.
Yeah, this. Yeah, it just, every girl was, somebody else said that he was low key annoying, like, and after a while, that was the thing. That's
although I gotta say, like, I still like the movie Mannequin.
I loved Mannequin. I will say, and what's her face? From Porky's, and Sex in the City.
Oh yeah, right. Well, she was. That's right. She wasn't Porky. She was Lassie.
She was. Woo,
Lassie. Lassie.
There's also a Vulcan in Star Trek.
Did not know that one.
Oh, Rob Lowe. Oh man, Rob Lowe in The Stand. I forgot about that. The miniseries, The Stand. Yep.
Why is her name?
We love Matthew Broderick movies. Just to answer that one.
Yeah, all Matthew Broderick. The Election is a great Matthew Broderick movie. If you haven't watched
my favorite.
So good.
Matthew Broderick just did one on Kim Cattrall. That's it, Kim Cattrall. Matthew Broderick just did a great one on Netflix, a special about the OxyContin thing. That was an excellent.
He was so good.
It took me a minute. It didn't take me long, but a minute to recognize it was him.
Yeah.
It looked like Ferris's father was on the show. I'm like, who is this person?
It's Ferris's.
Yeah, that was.
Mannequin 2 is an underrated sequel.
Really?
No.
Okay.
Really
Mannequin was great.
Did you see Mannequin 2?
No, but because the Mannequin seeing the music, okay, and we can build this dream together, stand in storms forever. That song was in there.
Nothing's gonna stop us now.
Everyone hates that song.
I love that song.
It works in Mannequin though, but it works in Mannequin.
The chart of most hated songs.
Is it really? I thought it'd be "We Built This City." I thought "We Built This City" would probably.
I got it wrong. It's that one. You're right. I got it wrong. I got the two songs confused. You're right.
Yeah. I built this city on rock and roll.
What
in the hell? Yeah. God, that was just a money grab at that point.
But there was a Mannequin 2. I didn't make that up. It's god awful. You got to see it.
I think I recall. I may have watched it.
It's not even Kim Cattrall. It's like a Wish version, a Temu version of Kim Cattrall in the sequel.
Oh yeah, Youngblood. Youngblood is another good one with Rob Lowe.
Youngblood, good movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep.
There's so many connections that we can make. Like that's why we have a studio audience here, which is all of you making these comments. There's so many connections that we can make that even the three of us, we just can't even talk about it. And then people come and then they say, oh yeah, Rob Lowe, Swayze, Keanu Reeves was all together in this movie and that movie. Those connections, that's what I think ties us together as Gen Xers. I think that's what ties us together as an entire generation. And I think that's why the Three View Mirror podcast, or the Three View Mirror, we're dropping the podcast now. I think that's why the Three View Mirror is going to be big one day, because it is. It's all about, it's not just us. It's the memories. It's the collective memories of a generation.
Yep.
And leave it to our resident Canadian to come up with a Rob Lowe movie that's about hockey.
Of course. And I do want to mention two movies that we didn't even mention of his. And I mean, come on, like The Outsiders, Rob Lowe, Emilio Estevez, Matt Dillon, Patrick Swayze, C. Thomas Howell, Ralph Macchio,
Tom Cruise,
and Diane Lane. I mean, and then About Last Night.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which they remade and was horrible. So I mean, The Outsiders is just, it's an iconic and it's classic. And, you want to talk about that entire group and how they all didn't kind of fit into the Brat Pack in different ways. They didn't. They were all, they did their own thing. And you could argue, besides maybe C. Thomas Howell, they all had maybe even more successful careers in some ways than a lot of the Brat Pack did. Patrick Swayze sure did.
Too Long Fu, someone mentioned. That was an incredible movie. It really was. I loved that movie.
Chad Lowe, the lesser Lowe. Imagine being Rob Lowe's brother. No matter how good looking you are, and Chad Lowe was not a bad looking kid, but he wasn't Rob Lowe. I mean, there must have been some level of hatred there, just looking over it. It's like, look at the genetic masterpiece my brother is, and I'm this.
You magnificent beast.
Which one are you, John?
I'm the magnificent beast. I got the brains in my family. You got pretty eyes.
You got some pretty teeth. You got pretty teeth.
Eyes.
You got some pretty teeth.
All right, guys. Well, next week, topic is all mine. I haven't come up with one yet, but I think raw dogging is definitely going to be on.
No, God, no.
All right,
In the
guys.
comments.
That's it. I think we're losing people now anyway.
Thanks all. Thank you so much for spending the time with us. I hope you enjoyed the topics this week, and you got to like kind of go back in the some nostalgia and some memories, and then listen to John go off on weird tangents, get us kicked out of
Raw dog tangents.
get us kicked off of YouTube.
I wanted to give it a shot.
See if we get kicked off of YouTube. Be awesome.
It's going to take a lot more than that. There's a lot on YouTube. We'll be fine. Well, all right, guys. We will see you back here again next week, live on the 3View Mirror. Bring a friend. Keep it growing. Keep it going. And we'll be back next Friday at 5:30. Thanks for being here. We'll see you again soon.
Also, we are planning these events, these live events. So just keep an eye out. We'll be talking about them soon.
Get ready to collect 300 of you and your closest friends to fill a room.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about good stuff. All right. I'm out. See you guys.
Later.
Whew. That was interesting.